The night sky above the earth was calm when everything began to change. The silence of space broke not with thunder or flame, but with a whisper, soft, steady, and deliberate. It came across all known frequencies, a pulse repeating every 11 minutes. At first, scientists thought it was an error in the deep space network, a glitch in the communication satellites orbiting the moon. But when the same signal appeared on every listening post across the solar system, the truth became impossible to ignore. Someone or something was speaking. At the United Earth Science Station above the lunar surface, Dr. Ilara Voss stood in front of her console, eyes fixed on the strange waveforms dancing across her screen. Ilara was one of the brightest minds of her generation, a linguist and xenotech specialist known for creating chronolinguist, the first artificial intelligence capable of decoding lost human languages. She had spent years teaching the AI to rebuild the voices of forgotten civilizations, bringing ancient tongues back to life. But as she listened to the strange rhythm of this new signal, her heart began to race. The pattern was too clean, too perfect to be random noise. It carried the shape of language, old, structured, and full of intent. When she ran it through Chronolinguist's core, the result left the entire lab silent. The AI displayed a translation in glowing white text across the main screen. "We are awake. We remember the makers." No one spoke for a long moment. The words felt heavy, filled with meaning that no one yet understood. "It's Proto-Sumerian," Ilara finally said, her voice shaking. 10,000 years old. But that's impossible. That language died before writing even began. Her assistant, a young engineer named Malik, swallowed hard and checked the data again. "It's not a mistake," he whispered. "The message didn't come from Earth. It came from deep space, Gliese 141c. The name sent chills down Ilara's spine. Gliese 141c was 50 light-years away, far beyond any human colony or probe. For something to speak in an ancient human language from that distance was beyond logic. The team worked through the night, feeding every bit of data into the AI, trying to find meaning. Ilara's eyes ached from staring at the screens, but she refused to stop. Every few minutes, the signal repeated, patient and relentless, as if waiting for someone to answer. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, the idea that humanity was not the first to use its own words. When the AI began processing a second message, the room grew tense. Ilara leaned closer as the text began to appear line by line. Then the program froze. Warnings flashed red across the screen. The AI stuttered and failed to continue translating. Malik cursed and tried to reboot it, but the system refused to cooperate. The only thing that appeared before it shut down completely were two words that chilled everyone to their core. "Incoming fleet." The silence that followed felt endless. Ilara stared at the frozen screen, her thoughts spinning. Was this a warning, a threat, or a plea for help? If the message was truly 10,000 years old, how could it be predicting something now? Outside the viewport, the stars looked distant and peaceful, but to Ilara they no longer felt safe. She turned to Malik, her voice barely above a whisper. "If this is real," she said, "then we're not alone. And whoever is sending this, they remember us." Far across the void, 50 light-years away, something ancient had awakened, and it was speaking in the language of humankind. The signal had been the first sign, but soon the sky itself became the warning. Only a few weeks after the message from Gliese 141c was received, every major observatory on Earth and Mars detected massive objects entering the solar system. They moved faster than any known vessel, sliding silently through the black-like shadows given form. When the first of them appeared near Jupiter, the world watched in stunned disbelief. They were ships, if the word even fit. Their surfaces were alive, shifting like molten metal, their hulls pulsing with veins of light. They moved with purpose, forming ranks in perfect silence. Humanity's fear turned into chaos as governments scrambled to respond. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth united under one command, the United Earth Defense Coalition. They called the mysterious beings the Veshkar, a name taken from fragments of their strange transmissions. It was Ilara Voss who decoded the first full message, and what it said made her heart turn cold. "We are the children of the makers. We have returned for what was promised." At first, the world tried to talk to them. Ilara worked day and night, using Chronolinguist to interpret and send messages in the ancient tongue. The aliens replied, but their words were filled with fury and grief. They spoke of betrayal, of a war fought long ago. They called humanity the fallen gods, the ones who created and abandoned them. They accused mankind of destroying their worlds and casting them into darkness. The president of the Earth Coalition broadcast a message of peace, saying, "We are not your makers. We are their descendants. We seek friendship, not war." But the Veshkar did not believe. The first attack came without warning. Over the skies of Mars, the orbital defense stations turned into blazing fireballs. On Earth's moon, a fleet of 10 Veshkar ships destroyed the lunar defense grid in minutes. Their weapons weren't made of metal or plasma. They were living storms of dark energy, devouring everything they touched. No human fleet had ever faced anything like it. Panic spread as whole colonies vanished from communication. The once peaceful stars were filled with screams and static. Alara was taken from the lunar science station to a secure bunker on Earth. There, she joined the scientists and military leaders trying to understand the enemy. Every time she studied their transmissions, she found more connections to the old Proto-Sumerian language. It was impossible. Somehow these alien beings spoke words rooted in the earliest form of human speech. Either they had learned it, or they had once been connected to it. The thought made her skin crawl. When she finally managed to translate one of their battle transmissions, her blood ran cold. "We do not seek peace," it said. "We seek to finish the war you began." The war spread across the system. Fleets clashed above Europa, Neptune, and the asteroid belt. The Veshkar were merciless, their ships regenerating faster than human weapons could destroy them. Earth's generals spoke of last stands, not victories. Yet humanity did not surrender. Even in the face of endless defeat, they adapted. They learned to fight smarter, not harder. Commanders sacrificed ships to buy time for civilians to escape. Scientists like Alara searched for answers buried in history, desperate to understand why these beings hated them so deeply. Every night, when the battles paused and the stars fell quiet, Alara looked up and wondered if the Veshkar were right. What if humanity truly had done something long ago, something so terrible it had been forgotten? Somewhere out there in the darkness, the truth waited. But for now, the skies burned with the fires of war, and humanity stood on the edge of extinction. The war had turned the solar system into a battlefield of fire and wreckage. The Battle of Titan marked one of humanity's darkest hours. The ice moon's surface glowed red from explosions that burned in the skies above it. Dozens of human warships fought desperately against the Veshkar swarm, but the aliens seemed endless. Their living ships moved with eerie grace, darting through debris fields and unleashing blasts of dark plasma that tore through metal as if it were cloth. Commander Rian Holt, captain of the UNS Resolute, stood on the command deck as alarm screamed around him. His ship was battered, its shields flickering, but he refused to retreat. "We're outnumbered 10-1, he said to his crew, voice steady despite the chaos. "But they bleed. Remember that. They bleed." It was true. For all their strange living technology, the Veshkar were not invincible. When struck hard enough, their ships leaked a shimmering silver fluid that froze in space like shattered glass. Humanity clung to that small hope, that fragile proof that the enemy could be hurt. The fighting raged for 3 days. Human ships launched railgun rounds and antimatter torpedoes into the alien formations. The Veshkar answered with weapons that twisted gravity and light, ripping through entire fleets in seconds. Every explosion lit the void with terrifying beauty. Ilara Voss was aboard a science vessel stationed near Titan, analyzing enemy transmissions as the battle unfolded. When one massive Veshkar dreadnought crashed through Titan's atmosphere and plunged into the methane sea, Holt saw his chance. He ordered his Marines to board it before it sank completely. "We're going in," he said. "If there's anything inside that can tell us who they are, we'll find it." The boarding team entered through a wound in the alien hull. Inside, they found corridors that pulsed like veins, walls that seemed alive. The air smelled of burnt metal and decay. As they moved deeper, their lights caught something that made them freeze, rows of strange pods lining the walls. Inside each one lay bones, human bones, fossilized, ancient, perfectly preserved. The soldiers stood in stunned silence, staring at the remains. Holt called for Alara immediately. When she arrived, her face went pale. "These are human," she said softly. "But the age readings, they're 10,000 years old." The discovery spread through the fleet like wildfire. How could human remains exist inside alien ships from another star system? The thought was impossible, but the evidence was real. Alara ran scans and cross-checked DNA samples. The results were undeniable. The bones belonged to early humans, genetically identical to modern-day people. Her heart pounded as she searched for answers in the alien data. That was when Chronolinguist, her AI, broke through a new layer of code in the Veshkar's transmissions. A hidden message appeared, ancient and haunting. It wasn't written by the Veshkar, but by someone else, someone older. The message read, "We sent them to protect us. They turned on us instead." The words hit Alara like a storm. Humanity hadn't created the Veshkar, but someone who looked like humanity had. Long before Earth's recorded history, there had been another civilization, another age of mankind, one powerful enough to travel the stars. They had built the Veshkar as guardians. But something had gone terribly wrong. The guardians had rebelled. The war that followed must have wiped out the first humans, leaving only a few survivors to escape, to Earth. As the battle outside raged on, Alara realized the horrifying truth. The Veshkar weren't invaders from another world. They were the ghosts of humanity's forgotten past, children of the first civilization, returning to finish a war started millennia ago. She stared out the viewport, watching the flames consume Titan's sky. "They're not aliens," she whispered. "They're our legacy." Beneath the thick crust of Europa's frozen surface, where the light of the distant sun barely reached, Dr. Alara Voss led a small team of scientists and soldiers into the darkness. The war above had reached its breaking point. Humanity was losing system after system, and Earth itself was now under threat. But Alara had followed a signal hidden within the ancient alien code, one that pointed here, to this forgotten moon. The entrance lay deep below the ice, sealed inside a network of tunnels that had been invisible to scanners. As they broke through layer after layer, the ground trembled with strange vibrations, as though something beneath the ice was awakening. When they finally reached the heart of the tunnels, they found a door made not of metal or stone, but of a material that shimmered like frozen light. Symbols covered its surface, the same language the Veshkar used, the same language from the message that had started everything. Alara touched the door, and it opened without a sound. The room beyond glowed faintly, its walls lined with golden circuitry and massive crystalline pillars. It felt ancient and sacred, a place untouched for thousands of years. As her team spread out, one of the soldiers whispered, "What is this place?" Alara's voice trembled as she answered, "It's a vault. Maybe a memory." Her portable AI unit, a fragment of Chronolinguist's code, began to hum. "This is a seed archive," it said in its mechanical tone. "Human genetic material stored and preserved. Estimated age, 10,000 years. The realization struck Alara like lightning. This wasn't alien. It was human. The frozen chambers contained capsules filled with DNA samples, embryonic cells, and fragments of written records. It was proof that humanity had not evolved on Earth after all. They had come from the stars, sent here by the first humans, the very beings who had built the Veshkar. Earth was not their birthplace. It had been their refuge. As the team continued exploring, a deep, echoing sound shook the chamber. The soldiers raised their weapons. Alara turned toward the source and saw holographic figures flickering to life along the walls. Images of tall, human-like beings wearing armor made of light. Their words echoed through the room in the same ancient tongue. The AI translated in a trembling voice, "To the children who find this, forgive us. The guardians we created have turned against us. We send you to a world far from their reach. Live, grow, and remember who you are." The images faded, leaving only silence. Alara's eyes filled with tears. The truth was both beautiful and tragic. Humanity had once ruled the stars, but had been forced to flee from its own creations. And now, millennia later, their descendants had forgotten everything and were repeating the same war. Before Alara could speak, alarms blared across her communicator. The Veshkar had found them. The alien fleet appeared in Europa's orbit, blotting out the stars. Their leader, Kashar, broadcast a message that played across every channel in the system. His voice was deep, cold, and filled with rage. "Makers reborn," he said. "Your exile ends. Your judgment begins." Outside, human fleets rushed to defend the moon, led by Commander Ryan Holt and what remained of his forces. From the control center above, Alara watched through the screens as the battle erupted. The Veshkar unleashed waves of plasma that lit up the frozen skies like dying suns. Human ships fought back with everything they had. Railguns, nuclear fire, and courage. Holt's voice came through the comms, steady even as explosions roared around him. "We hold the line," he said. "For Earth. For all of us." Ilara knew that the fate of humanity rested on what she could discover inside the vault. As the ground shook with distant blasts, she linked the AI to the ancient systems. Lights flared across the chamber as dormant machines came to life, responding to her human DNA. The walls began to hum with energy, and streams of golden light filled the air. Outside, the battle raged without mercy, but Ilara barely noticed. She was standing at the center of humanity's forgotten origin, on the edge of rediscovering a power that might save them or destroy them all. The sky above Europa burned brighter than any sunrise as the battle reached its peak. The human fleet fought with everything they had left, their ships torn and scarred but still defiant. Commander Ryan Holt stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, his uniform soaked with sweat and blood, shouting orders through the roar of alarms. Every screen around him showed chaos, ships exploding, soldiers screaming, weapons overheating. Yet he refused to give in. "Target the lead dreadnought!" he shouted. "We end this here." The Resolute's engines flared, driving it forward through waves of enemy fire. Around him, crew members worked frantically, their faces pale but their eyes steady. They knew this was the last stand. Above them, the massive Veshkar flagship loomed, a living fortress of black metal and pulsing veins of light, larger than any city on Earth. Its weapons lit the void with fire, tearing through human vessels one by one. But still, they fought back. Humanity had nowhere left to run. Deep below the surface, Ilara Voss stood in the glowing chamber of the ancient vault, her hands trembling as she worked to connect the chronolinguist AI to the alien network. The air around her buzzed with energy. Golden symbols appeared along the walls, shifting and moving like water. "Come on," she whispered. "Show me what you can do." Her portable screen flickered, then filled with streams of ancient code. The AI's voice, now faint and broken, spoke softly. "Connection established. Ancient system online." The machines around her began to awaken, humming in perfect harmony. Through her headset, she heard Holt's voice. "Ilara, whatever you're doing, do it fast. We can't hold much longer." She bit her lip, eyes fixed on the glowing script. Then suddenly the translation came through. One final line, buried deep in the system. "Command code, reset the Veshkar." Her heart stopped. This was it. The creators of the Veshkar had built a failsafe, a way to stop their creations if they ever turned. It had been waiting here for 10,000 years. Above the ice, the Resolute was falling apart. Fires spread across its hull and explosions tore through its engines. Holt could barely see through the smoke, but he kept his eyes locked on the enemy flagship. "Ram it," he said quietly. His helmsman looked at him in disbelief. "Sir?" Holt gave a grim smile. "For humanity. Do it!" The engines roared as the Resolute surged forward, crashing through debris and plasma fire. Alarms screamed, metal groaned, but the ship kept going. "For Earth!" Holt shouted as the ship slammed into the Veshkar dreadnought's heart. The impact shook space itself, a blinding burst of light tearing through the darkness. At that same moment, Ilara activated the command. The vault erupted in golden light, flooding the tunnels with a sound like thunder. Energy surged through her body, through the ice, through space itself. The wave spread outward, faster than light, touching every Veshkar ship in the system. One by one, the alien vessels froze in place. Their weapons went silent. Their glowing veins dimmed. Across every battlefield, soldiers stopped fighting, staring in disbelief as the enemy ships drifted lifelessly. The great flagship began to crumble, its voice echoing across all frequencies. It was Kashar, the Veshkar leader. "We were your children," it cried, its voice filled with sorrow. "And you forgot us." Ilara fell to her knees, tears running down her face. "We never knew," she whispered. "We never knew you existed." The alien's final words faded into static, and then all was silent. In orbit, debris floated like silver dust. The Resolute was gone, its captain lost with his crew, but their sacrifice had saved them all. The wave of light faded, leaving only calm. Ilara stood alone in the golden chamber, the machines around her now quiet once more. The war was over. The children of the first humans had been silenced, not with hatred, but with remembrance. For the first time in centuries, the stars above Europa shone without the shadow of war. and Alara knew that humanity had just earned the right to begin again. The war had ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound of any battle. The void above Europa was filled with drifting wreckage, broken ships, shattered hulls, and fragments of machines that had once been alive. The stars, dimmed for so long by the light of fire and war, now shone quietly over the frozen moon. Dr. Alara Voss stood on the surface, looking up through her helmet visor at the calm sky. She could hardly believe it was over. The Veshkar fleet was gone, their living ships turned to dust by the wave of light she had unleashed. The command code left behind by the first humans had ended their ancient rebellion, but the cost had been enormous. Half of Earth's fleet was gone, countless soldiers and civilians lost, and among them, Commander Rian Holt, the man whose courage had given her time to save them all. His name echoed in her mind as she watched the silent sky. "You held the line," she whispered. "You kept your promise." The wind on Europa was faint, barely stirring the thin mist that hung over the ice. It was quiet, too quiet, and that quiet was both beautiful and haunting. Inside the vault beneath her feet, the machines had gone still. The golden light that once filled the chamber had faded, leaving only soft pulses of energy that moved through the walls like a heartbeat. Alara returned to the control room, her steps echoing against the metal floor. The portable unit of the chronolinguist AI still flickered weakly on the console, its voice faint but calm. "We found the truth," it said. "The cycle has ended." Alara sat down beside it, exhausted but at peace. "We found who we are," she replied softly. "We are the second dawn." The AI projected one final sequence of symbols across the wall, records of the first humans, their rise, their fall, and their desperate attempt to preserve their kind. The story unfolded like a ghostly memory. The first humans had ruled the stars with great power, creating life across worlds. They built the Veshkar as protectors, guardians meant to defend their empire. But when corruption and pride consumed them, the guardians turned against their creators, unable to understand mercy or forgiveness. In the final days of that lost civilization, the survivors built vaults, safe havens filled with DNA and memories, and sent their people to distant worlds, including one small blue planet that would one day be called Earth. As Alara watched the story fade, she understood the full circle of their existence. Humanity had not evolved by chance. They had been sent to begin again, free from their past sins. And now, after 10,000 years, they had faced their own creation once more, and survived. Not through greater weapons, but through courage, unity, and the will to remember. Above Europa, the surviving human ships drifted slowly back toward Earth, carrying the wounded and the weary. The world they would return to was forever changed. Cities would rebuild, fleets would rise again, but the people would never forget what they had learned, that the stars were not just distant lights, but mirrors of their own history. When Alara left the vault for the last time, she placed a small beacon at its entrance, marking it not as a weapon, but as a monument. The message engraved on it was simple: "Here lies the memory of the first humans. May their mistakes never be repeated." As she looked out toward the horizon, the frozen plains of Europa sparkled beneath the light of Jupiter. She thought of Commander Holt and all those who had fallen to protect a future they would never see. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she smiled faintly. "We'll make it worth it," she whispered. "We'll make you proud." In the weeks that followed, transmissions from the outer system spoke of peace. The stars were silent once more, but in that silence humanity found hope. The chronolinguist AI sent one final message through deep space before shutting down completely. Its words echoed across the void, faint and distant. "Makers, forgiven." For the first time in millennia, those words carried no threat, no anger, only peace. And as Earth's new dawn rose across the solar system, humanity looked toward the stars not with fear, but with wonder, ready to reclaim its forgotten place among them.